All right, welcome everybody to Hump Hangouts. Today is the 20th of October, 2021, and we have a very special announcement. We are 2 episodes away from our 7-year anniversary of Hump Hangouts, which will be episode 364. We're definitely going to have some good stuff going there. I'm not going to steal the thunder. We've got a special guest joining us, which I'll let Bradley talk about. And as we are known to do occasionally on anniversaries, we generally do some fun stuff, have some good giveaways. We'll definitely have some more to share, but join us live. That is 2 weeks. Put that down in the calendar. So with that quick one out of the way, let's say hi real quick before we dive into the questions. So Chris, how you doing today?
Doing good. It's been unusually warm today again. I think we had 22 degrees Celsius. So unbelievable. So obviously I couldn't resist and spend most of the day outside today. So other than that, things are pretty good. Can't complain. And tomorrow it's back to work. Lots of things coming, and you might see some changes here as well soon.
Sounds good. Awesome. Bradley, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm excited about 7-year anniversary, man. That's insane. Think about that. We're at 362 now, and I think we've only taken off like twice in 7 years. And that was a scheduled time off. You know what I mean? So it's been really consistent. I've always said this. I really enjoy doing Hump Day Hangouts. Always have. And so we continue to do it. And yes, we got a special guest. We're going to start doing guest host, having a guest host come join us probably about once a month. I mean, it's not going to be like a real rigid schedule or anything like that, but I've got a number of SEO peeps that I want to bring on as guests, just to answer some questions and just to give them a little bit of exposure and expose you guys, our audience, to some of the other people that I respect, some of the other colleagues in this business that I have a lot of respect for. And the first one that we're going to have in 2 weeks, his name is Brock Meisner. And Brock, if I'm butchering your last name, please forgive me. He's relatively new in my world. I just ran across him in he's got a Patreon channel. If you guys aren't familiar with Patreon, it's patreon.com, and it's essentially where creators can, musicians and people of influence, things like that, can just, you can go subscribe to, it's behind a kind of a paywall or whatever. And he's got a really good channel, that Patreon channel. There's a free part of it, and then there's a subscription-based part of it. It's only $20 a month. And if you guys are doing, which most of our audience does local, he's got a great Patreon channel for $20 a month, where he drops he does a video or two per month behind you have to be subscribed, a paying subscriber, to get his locked content, but it's great. And he's put out some really good stuff over the last few months. So I invited him on, and this will be actually the first time that I get a chance to meet with him in person, or, virtually, for our 7-year anniversary. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be fun. And then, like I said, I've already got 5 or 6 other people in mind that over the course of the next several months that we'd like to bring on, or I would like to bring on, to just kick it for an hour, talk shop with, talk about GMB stuff, SEO stuff, answer questions. And I think it'll be fun, and just add a little bit of fresh blood into this Hump Day Hangout. So
awesome. Well, cool, man. I'm looking forward to that, and be interesting to meet him, check that out. And speaking of guest appearances and special events, Bradley, you talked with Damon on Monday, right?
Yeah, Damon Nelson of RSS Master Technology fame. And he's got this really cool kind of like database that he set up called Minion Builders. It's to protect your persona profiles that you're building. Really interesting stuff. He's added a bunch of tools to this like dashboard. It's a SaaS app essentially, where you can keep all of your profiles that you create. And it has a bunch of tools built into it that helps you to create profiles very, very quickly, with all kinds of stuff, different profile images. And it's got, like an image tool in there that will change the image. It'll create tunes, like cartoon images of the profile images, background removers, caricatures, like all kinds of stuff. And it's cool because really interesting is that he opened up his presentation when we did the webinar on Monday with how he had been building these, what he calls minions, for several years. And what he started to experience was that he was keeping all of his minions in Google spreadsheets. And when he would start to verify accounts for those minions that were in spreadsheets, a lot of the like Twitters and Facebooks and things like that would start forcing re-verifications, phone verifications for these profiles. And he determined that it was because of all the profile information being stored in Google Sheets, which is really interesting because I basically run my entire business in Google Sheets. and, we do a lot of SEO stuff. So, it got me thinking, maybe I should rethink some of my, where I keep my data, to keep it less accessible by Google. And as Damon mentioned, in the terms of service, when you using a Google account, you agree to the terms of service that they can basically read all of your sheets, even whether they're public or not. All of your files and Google Drive and everything, Google has access to. And so, I started thinking about it, and I was like, man, this is something that I should do. Now, originally bringing minion builders to our audience was mainly for people that are in Syndication Academy. Most of the people like in our mastermind and such, they just buy done for you syndication networks and all that. So it's not really an issue for a lot of our mastermind members to create profiles, but a lot of people in Syndication Academy, they're building profiles fairly regularly. And so I thought that's what this would be about. But then I realized like there's a lot more use for having kind of a secured private database to house your profile information. Not necessarily just to create profiles, but also to store that information. And so I went ahead and picked up the agency account as well. And I'm going to start using that for my own business. It's going to take me a while to transfer everything into it, but I think it'll be a little bit safer that way, as well as, like I said, it just makes it really easy to create profiles very, very quickly. And now I can start assigning my VAs. I've got one VA, Harvey, who does a ton of stuff for us, but he's not being fully utilized for what his salary is. So I think I'm going to actually train him or give him some instruction on how to start building up some of these profiles other than strictly for SEO purposes, but to create like real social personas that you can use to drive social traffic, which if you guys have been following us for any period of time, activity, relevance, trust, and authority. Well, activity signals can be generated by these profiles, especially if you have really well fleshed out profiles that have been built up, have friends and followers and fans and, all that kind of stuff. And referral traffic from social networks is actually a great SEO signal. So there's a lot that can be done with these minions if they're built and developed properly. And so I think this was pretty cool service that Damon brought to us on Monday.
Nice. Real quick, speaking of webinars, Bradley's got something next week. He shared in the mastermind previously, but he wanted to share a couple details of this. He thought it was important enough to share with everybody. So we're going to be having some invites go out to the wider semantic mastery community. If you can join us, we're going to have a short webinar next week along with some details about that. So just wanted to let you know that that's coming. If you're interested, I highly suggest you get signed up for that. We wanted to share that with you as well as a little bit of information about the mastermind. So more details on that to come. So before we get started, guys, is there anything else we need to cover? All right, good to go. Let's jump into the questions. We got a few, looks like.
Yeah, we got a few, not a whole lot. So anybody attending?
I know some of these, we're doing good, man. Wow, there's like, I don't know, there's like 10 questions. Let's get into it.
All right. I was going to say, post your questions if you got them. We should have time.
Cool.
Interesting ones too. All right. You guys are seeing my screen, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So Ruggs is up first. What's up, Ruggs? He says, hello again. Love all the feedback. Last week regarding your preference for building money site content with original content using AI tools at the end, you confessed that you could use the mashup tool page rewriter as long as it's rephrased and passes copyscape. That seems to be a quick and dirty way. What's really the downside? Would Google eventually catch on? I don't know, to be honest, Ruggs. It's for years. We've had a lot of members, students, whatever, that build local sites, and then they would, clone the local sites, and all they would really do is swap out the location tags, right? So the location modifiers on the pages and use it. I never liked to do that. I always tried to use unique content. If for example, if it was a multi-location, it was a one brand with multiple locations. For every location page, I would have original content written, right? Or one of the more efficient or economical ways to do it would be to have original content written. Now, this is before AI writing tools, okay? AI writing assistants and such. But I would have an original piece of content written, and then I would have that piece of content rewritten by like 3 or 4 different other. So I would take one piece of content and turn it into 5 pieces of content, right? Because again, we would have an original, which I would, I always hired like 5-star writers or whatever. So I'd pay a little bit more, but I would have like a 1,000-word article, it might be, $40 or whatever it was. And then I would hire rewrites, but I would have several different writers rewrite that original piece of content so that it was all very unique, right? If you have one person try to rewrite the same thing multiple times, a lot of times it's very, very similar. But if you have multiple writers do it, then it's 100% unique. So that's how I used to do it. But and I always suggested that that's what you should do, because I've always assumed for years now that at some point Google was going to, come slap those sites that would use basically the same content on every page, but just swap out the location information. However, this is, years later, and I've never seen that happen. And in fact, I've had a lot of colleagues or, members of our group and things like that have just used the same content and just swapped out location tags, and they've been fine with it. So, I'm kind of changing my opinion after all these years about it. Mike Martin is the one that actually, he's done a lot of tests with some of his Magic Page stuff, and found that, it's unnecessary to spin stuff. And I think the follow-up question, Ruggs, I read this earlier, is something similar to is what you're actually bringing that up. But I've started testing with lately, and I found that I'm able to actually do just fine with I like original content on the the originally we draft content. Now again, instead of like hiring writers to do it, I've got a blogger that's on salary now that she just generates the content using AI tools, AI writing assistants. And then what I'm doing with that is I'm actually, starting to test with some Magic Page stuff myself, where I'm using the same content and it's not even rephrased. It's just the location tokens that are sprinkled throughout the content are swapped out with whatever the location modifiers are for each specific location. And, it kind of makes sense to me why that would work. In the way that Mike Martin actually described it, makes sense to me as well, which was that, you don't have to say the same thing. If you got 8 locations, right, and they're all they all provide the same services, right? It's for one company and it's multiple locations, and they all provide, the same services at every location. Then is it really necessary to have 100% unique and original content on every page? No, logically, it doesn't need to be, in my opinion, because it's the same services. It's just optimized for that specific location. Like, in other words, it's referencing the specific location that those services are available in. So each location page is optimized for its own location, but the same services, right? And so, like I said, I just started testing with some Magic Page stuff. It's been a long process just to get to this point. And I'm starting to see, although right now, for whatever reason, I'm having trouble getting anything indexed, not just Magic Page stuff, but it's just indexing is really slow right now for some reason, at least in my experience. So, I don't think it's necessary to have 100% unique content, although that's always what I've said. I'm starting to come around a little bit and doing some testing on my own, and I'll have more information or more of an opinion to share about that in the coming weeks, as more of my Magic Page stuff starts to get, be as I develop more of that out, is what I'm saying, and start to see how things index and all of that. But yeah, I don't think, like, for example, my blogger, she actually sent me an email a few weeks ago now, and she said, it's exhausting trying to write about tree services over and over and over again. And I said, yeah, I guess so, because I'm, pretty much single industry now, right? All I do is work with tree service contractors. And so I've asked her to write, dozens and dozens of articles for tree service stuff. And it's like, she gets to a point where she's like tired of writing about the same stuff. And I said, well, actually, with some of these rephrasing tools that are available now, you can take content that you've already written and just run it through those rephrasing tools. And then obviously swap them out and optimize them for the specific locations and the specific brand that we're going to apply them to. But it makes sense. Think about it. If you build kind of a database of your own, relevant content for whatever projects you're working on, with the tools available to us now, like, and not spinners, but rephrasing tools, you could repurpose that content over and over and over again. So again, back to your original question, Ruggs, for one site, do you think Google would eventually catch on? I don't know. I mean, I've been guessing that they were going to. Google was going to catch on at some point and come slap all the sites that have basically duplicate content except for location tags. But I haven't seen that, right? All these years, and I haven't seen that. So I feel like I might have been doing overkill, but it was always in the effort of trying to prevent, losing a bunch of assets in the future. However, like I said, if I'm going to build stuff manually, perhaps I want to still have it more unique. But if I'm going to be using automation such as Magic Page, I don't see the need for that, like at least not right now, but that may change, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but Ruggs, I don't know if Google's going to catch on or not. I can only speculate. And I've been speculating for years that they would, and they haven't to this point. So I to be honest with you, I don't know. I think it's worth testing. And that's why I'm trying to test it. So the follow-up question was Magic Page plugin creator Mike Martin states in a video that it's not necessary to rephrase content for local area pages of the same service, as Google expects the content to be the same, except for the city, zip, geo, metadata, etc. And we'll rank those pages anyways. What's your experience and take on this? I think I pretty much just explained that. I'm testing that right now. It's logical. It makes 100% sense to me what Mike is saying. And Mike is the one that started to sway my opinion on this, to be honest with you. It was, I've had a couple of private calls with Mike Martin over the last few months. And he was really the one that started to sway my opinion on that. And so I'm giving it a real test right now with some of my own projects. In fact, we have the Build with Bradley group, which is a Magic Page group, a mass page group, period. But, I'm using Magic Page plugin. And that's one of the things we're trying to test in that group. Okay. Would it be a good strategy to start with only one page of content and then try the Magic Page plugin to let it create the semi-unique local pages? And if they don't rank, then rephrase the content later. Thanks. Yeah. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Ruggs, right now what I'm working on is I've built a couple of sites. I've got 2 sites in particular that I've built that traditional WordPress sites that I've had really well optimized content that my blogger created for me. And right now, like, that's where I started to say I'm actually just having a hell of a time getting some stuff indexed right now. And like, it's across multiple sites. So but that's my strategy for the first couple months that I started using Magic Page plugin. It's like 3 months into it now. In the first couple of months, I was trying to build a site from scratch with Magic Page plugin. And like, I struggled going through the YouTube channel, and like Keith Best has a bunch of training on it and all this. And I mean, I went through hours and hours of training, and I just was struggling with the Magic Page plugin setup and everything else, like as far as like trying to build the sites with it. And then when Herc Magnus came on and was talking for Mike's group, and he was talking about Zagio, which we're actually going to have Herc come on in 2 or 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks as well. He's got some pretty cool stuff going on also. But during that webinar, he mentioned that build a regular WordPress and get it ranked first. Once you get it ranked for like one location, then you add Magic Page to start building out location pages surrounding that location, and then you can expand from there, right? And that was the missing piece for me. Like, that made it click. I was just like, oh shit, that's exactly, like, that made sense to me. And I had missed, for whatever reason, for months, I'm not kidding, for like 2 months, I went through hours and hours of content trying to figure out like how to build the sites the best way, what was the most efficient way. And I was just struggling with it. And when I heard that, it was just like, okay, now I get it. So I completely changed my strategy. I nuked, essentially, and deleted my other sites that I had started to build with Magic Page plugin, and just went the traditional route of just building a site manually, and waiting for it to index and rank before I add Magic Page plugin. So that's what I'm doing right now. And that's where I just mentioned again, I'm having issues with some indexing right now, but I've got a couple sites that I built that I'm just waiting for me to get some better results organically with the pages that are currently published. And then I'm going to add Magic Page plugin to it and just duplicate those same, the service plus location page that is ranked. I'm just going to start building out with Magic Page plugin the surrounding pages, and I'm not going to rephrase it or anything. I'm just going to use the same damn content. All I'm going to do is obviously take the ranking page and tokenize it with all the, short codes or, X fields or whatever, so that when it goes to build out the pages, it'll swap it out with the appropriate location information, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the strategy I'm going. To me, it's a much easier, more logical way to build a site than trying to build a site with Magic Page plugin right off the bat. Just do what you already know how to do, which is rank, build a regular WordPress site, rank a page. And once you have that page ranked, then add Magic Page and allow it to start building out pages surrounding it, right? So you get more reach, more exposure, and you can use it for a number of things, okay? So it's a really good question, though. Okay, Brian says, I'm building out location pages for a client that is service area business operating nationally in all cities, despite their head office being in one city. I have organization schema on the homepage for the brand. What would it be a good idea to add local business schema to all location pages alongside service schema, or is this a bad idea? I've seen a competitor in a search do this, but not sure if it's wise to follow suit. Okay. Yes, organization schema should be on the homepage without a doubt. Okay. For every location page, yeah, I recommend local business schema for those. And then typically there's going to be like a separate page on the site or pages on the site that talk about the services available. Like it could be a separate service page for each service, or one service page that covers all of the services. And yeah, so for the service page, not location page, but the service page, that should have service schema, right? Or a service type schema on it. And then for your location pages, local business schema. Now, on your location pages, they can reference, and it should reference the service page, right? The services offered, which would reference the service schema. And then it should also reference the organization as the parent organization of the local business schema. Does that make sense? So that's what's called connected data items, or nested schema is another term. There's a number of terms for it, but connected data items, nested schema. Rob Beal has a great course, schema tech architecture on how to build all this stuff out. And I know Rob and Marco are, it's in beta right now, but a schema app that will, like, essentially a SaaS app that will produce schema for you. Because his course is about, like, he has a bunch of templates in there, but it's all manually drafted schema. And personally, I don't have the desire to go through doing it manually, although it's very, very effective. He's got the most comprehensive schema training that I've ever seen, is Rob's. There's no doubt he's a complete data nerd when it comes to that. And it's awesome. In fact, I mean, it's inspiring to see how he codes schema and how deep he gets into that stuff. And he calls it node referencing and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm getting at is, yes, it does make sense, but you have to connect the schema properly, Brian, because if you don't, here's what I've seen people make mistakes. And I used to do this several years ago as well. I would put organization schema site-wide. So it would be like, the JSON LD would be in the HTML header globally, right? So site-wide. And then I would have on location pages, local business schema. Well, then it's two separate sets of schema on the location pages. If you run it through the schema, validation tool, it would come up with two separate pieces of schema on the page. And then it starts to ambiguate whatever the main entity of the page is, right? If it's got two separate sets of schema on the page that aren't connected properly, then which one is the main entity of the page? Google has to determine that instead of you telling it what the main entity of the page is, which is what we should be doing. That's what schema is about, is us feeding the bot the information that we want the bot to know, right? So I was doing it wrong, and I didn't realize that until really Rob's training at PoFu Live 2020, so over a year ago now. And that's what really, like, again, it was inspiring. It inspired me to really get back into doing SEO, like, really deep again and all that. And that's where I started learning about connected data items, or nested schema, whatever you want to call it. And so now, like I said, I do what we were just talking about, like for multi-location businesses, which I have a few of them that I manage. I have organization schema on the homepage. We have service page or pages. Each one of those are marked up with service schema. Then we have location pages, which is local business schema. But in every one of the local business, so on the service page, it references the organization. And on the local business pages, the location pages, it references its local business schema as the main entity of the page. But it references the parent organization schema, and it references the service provided, right? Does that make sense? Which would be the service schema. So that's again, that's kind of what Rob describes in his training. So I would encourage you to check that out. And yes, Brian, I think that's the best strategy for schema for what you're talking about, your specific project. But you have to connect those items properly, or else you ambiguate the main entity of each one of those pages. So hopefully that makes sense. Good question as well. Kuba says, what would you do with a heap of spare smartphones? Was thinking of building a small phone farm, but not sure how it could be monetized. Would it be handy for CTR? I'll tell you what, Kuba, that would be a great thing to do for what I was just talking about with Damon Nelson's minion builders, because you could assign each one of those spare smartphones that you have to a persona profile. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that you can assign more than one profile per smartphone. I'm not sure what the threshold is. I have not been through all the training yet. Damon's been working on this stuff for a couple of years now. So I would encourage you to really check out that Minion Builders webinar that I just talked about. We did on Monday with Damon, because I think that would be, I mean, look, here's the thing. If you built up some, I don't know, because I have not been through the training yet. I just went through the webinar with Damon. I just started, I just signed up for the Minion Builders, dashboard and everything else. And it comes with training, depending on what level you get. The agency level comes with all the training and the boot camp and all that other stuff. And I haven't been through it yet. But I know that I'm pretty sure you can assign more than one profile per cell phone, right? Per mobile phone. I don't know whether it's 2 or 4 or whatever the maximum is. But what I'm getting at is, if you were to develop, let's say you had 10 phones, okay, and you were able to assign just 2 profiles per phone, and you built them up, right? Now you'd have 20 persona profiles that you could use for a number of like really cool things. Social traffic that you could send to places for SEO signals. You could do reviews. Think about that. You could, check your local laws, but you could post reviews for people, sell reviews. There's just a number of things that you can do. And if you go check out the webinar that Damon did with us on Monday, you'll see that, you can even sell these profiles once they've been built up, right? So that you can actually make, and sell them for high dollar. If you spend the time building up a profile, that has all the social media accounts and that has followers and and there's ways to automate a lot of this stuff too. And Damon teaches a lot of that stuff too. You could sell some of these profiles for thousands of bucks, no kidding. So, if you've got a bunch of smart, as far as CTR, I don't know. You'd have to have some sort of program that would direct the traffic through those phones. We did a webinar with Michael Bose and Viper Tools, which he's built a system that does that. But it's his own proprietary system. So you'd have to have something, you'd have to program something that does something like what he's already done. And he's been working on it for years as well. So, yes, it would be valuable for CTR, but how would you automate that? Right. So that's why I think, again, I'm not in that business, right? I just would rather buy tools like Viper Tools, for example. But specifically, if I had a bank of, multiple spare cell phones and I was trying to find a good use for them right now, especially after seeing the Minion Builders webinar and realizing like, hey, you could really build up some profiles and do a lot of really good things for SEO, for sending traffic. You could sell the profiles, a number of things like that. So that's something that I would consider for sure. Okay. Greg says, is it a good idea to build links to our images and other WordPress attachments like PDF? If so, what types of backlinks? I don't recommend it, because we don't recommend building links to directly to your money site stuff, period, other than through your own branded assets, and very strategically at that, which is why we always talk about using syndication networks and the SEO shield, and that kind of stuff, because they're all branded assets and it makes sense to kind of link back to your own content from your own branded assets. That's why we called it the SEO shield for all these years, is because it shields your site from external link building. You can do all your external link building to the SEO shield assets, right? So your tier 1 branded assets. So I don't recommend building links directly to your WordPress files and attachments, unless they're through your own branded assets. Right? Does that make sense? So in other words, if you wanted to link to images, like in a WordPress post or a Blogger post or a Tumblr post, and then, either hot link the image, in other words, like embed the image, so that it's pushing credit back to your WordPress site where the image is hosted, or literally linked to it, and the attachment files and things like that. That would be okay in my opinion. But I mean, again, if you know what you're doing and you have a good source of links that aren't spammy and that sort of stuff, yes, you could build links to images, PDF files and things like that, but I don't recommend it because, you know, you could end up causing harm. But you can do stuff like that, like I said, throughout your own branded assets, right? So for example, here's an example, okay? When I publish a press release, which I do a ton of press release stuff, there's in Press Advantage, which is who I'm mainly using, although I'm testing Signal Genesis right now, which is, there's a lot of really cool features in that as well. Lane and Matt have done a really good job with that, guys. I'll be bringing that to our audience in the coming weeks for sure. Anyway, with Press Advantage, when I'm ordering a press release or submitting a press release order, there's a field to upload an image or attach an image, and you can either upload an image or you can put a URL in and it will embed the image, but the image will be hosted on the URL. And I used to upload images, and then I started testing with using Google My Business post images, so GMB post images, and taking the URL from the post image and then embedding that in the press release instead of uploading an image, right? And then you can still add alt text. And I started seeing a boost from that. So then I said, well, shit, I'll start doing that with WordPress too, right? So for my self-hosted WordPress sites, the same thing. If I'm going to be, sometimes I'll take an image from a GMB post, so the image URL from a GMB post, and that will be the embedded image in the press release. Other times I'll take a WordPress hosted image and embed that in the press release. The point that I'm trying to make here is that, yeah, that's not a direct link. It's just it's an embedded, image. So it's like an iframe almost, but it's an image, right? So, and those tend to work well too, because it pushes kind of power back to where the source, where it's hosted, the image is hosted, either WordPress or Google My Business or whatever, without it even being a direct link, right? Does that make sense? So, yeah, I think there's definitely value to that. Just be careful with how you do it, is what I'm saying. Okay. Arby, these were some good questions. I don't know if you answered them or not. Because I asked you a question about this, but I'll read through these guys. He says, Bradley, are you affiliated with the seemingly fairly new app called Staxio? There are several they use several YouTube thumbnails, one of which has your cheery mug. Anyway, more interesting than the iconic BB is their tech, which purportedly creates G-Stacks from within Google, not using APIs, not using browser emulation. Any idea how they're making that happen? If not familiar, maybe something for the caffeine-addled SM rocket scientists to take a look at. Yeah, and I looked at that because I saw your question earlier, Arby, and I went and looked at it. No, I don't know. I never heard of it until you mentioned it in this question here. I do feel like I know one of the developers, formerly a mastermind member from several years ago, Braulio, I believe, is one of the developers, because I looked at their sales page, and in the comments section or the testimonial section, there's several people that mention him by name, and I'm pretty sure it's the same Braulio, because that's a unique name that was in one of my or was in our mastermind a few years ago. But no, I'm not affiliated with them in any way. Again, I've not even heard of it until today. And if they are using my image anywhere on their own YouTube videos and such, that's why I asked for you to drop the link or message me privately, send me an email, whatever, because I did not authorize that. And I'm not cool with that. It's okay if I'm cool with it. And, and some of our colleagues, other developers, I'm happy to give a video, a testimonial, that sort of thing when it's warranted. But I know nothing about this thing. It sounds like it could be cool, but again, I'm not too keen on somebody using my image without permission. It's just doesn't seem right to me. But it is what it is. If you go to Legit or Fiverr or anything else, you'll see Semantic Mastery graphics without the Semantic Mastery logo that have just been pirated all over the place, where people selling Google Cloud links and all this other shit, which has all been copied from, RYS Academy, which we launched under Semantic Mastery in 2015. So, syndication networks, you go try to buy IFTTT networks from Fiverr or Legit or anything else, you'll see the graphics that we created being used on their sales pages. they just removed our logo. And so like, they didn't even change the damn graphics. And so, I mean, what do you do? We didn't copyright the shit. So what do? You know what I memean? But no, I'm not familiar with it. I don't know how they're doing it. I know Marco tried for several years, or for over a couple of years to try to automate building drive stacks, because we build so many of them, or our builders did, and it just, every time we ever tried to automate that stuff, it would, they just would get terminated, or they just wouldn't be as effective as when we manually built them, which is why we manually build them, right? Or why we used to manually build them. But now the Heavy Hitter Club store is Marco and Rob's. Semantic Mastery is not part of that anymore, although I still buy and use the services. Okay. But so, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what they're doing there. More power to them. I hope they're successful with it. All I ask is that people give credit where credit is due. And if they're using my likeness, I should be at least notified and ask permission before doing so. Okay, moving on. Okay, we're almost out of questions, guys, and we still got plenty of time. So if you got some questions, post them. Otherwise, we'll wrap up in just a few minutes, which we can certainly do a little bit early. Vance says, good afternoon, gents. Good afternoon to you as well, Vance. I recently took on a new client in a very competitive field. Looking at the #1 competitor in Ahrefs, I noticed that the site has 26,000 keywords. Where do they pull this data from? Does it help in rankings? And how do I load up my client's site? Lots more keywords. Thank you in advance. I'm not sure how Ahrefs pulls in their data, because I'm not a user of it. I'm really not. I really never have been. I mean, I've used it a couple of times, but I prefer Majestic. I also use SEMrush. So I'm not sure. Where they're getting 26,000 keywords from. How do I load up my client sites with a lot more keywords? Well, here's the thing. I don't know that you want to load up your site. If you've got a lot of content on the site, then your site should be getting impressions, or your client site should be getting impressions for various keyword combinations, search queries, right? One of the best ways I think one of the best data tools that we have available to us, guys, is Search Console. Right. I mean, I've been saying that for years. I've always, whenever I'm doing organic stuff, I've always used Search Console as a source of data, because it's like, it's straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Right. It's Google's data. And so what I like to do is go to performance, in Search Console, and then check the queries tab. And you can sort by page. You can all kinds of stuff. You can sort by, or you can select specific pages to where you're only seeing the queries that page has been given impressions for. You can do it site-wide or domain-wide, which is the default view. But my point that I'm trying to make here is go to the queries report, right? So performance, queries, the tab, underneath like the graph, and click on queries. Now, if you want to select a specific page and only show queries for specific pages, which makes sense because you can kind of narrow in on specific keyword themes or sets for the pages that you want to be, optimized for, then you would first, before clicking on queries, you click pages, then select whatever page you want, click on that page, that URL for that page. And then once that comes up, then you click on the queries tab, right? And then from there, that's going to give you all the queries that page has been given impressions for in Google search. Doesn't matter where it ranks. In fact, I've seen, like, there's a box at the top in the graph which says, if you check it, it'll show your average position, right? So average rank position. And so what's interesting is if you click that box, you'll see in that query report, like I've seen it go as high as like 198, which is page 20 in Google. Think about that. So it's not like a lot of the keyword tools that only show keywords that appear in the top 100s. Like if a page is ranked in the top 100 results, so on the first 10 pages, a lot of keyword tools won't show any data beyond page 10. But Google Search Console does. And like I said, I think I've even seen like a 212 before, which is really interesting because that would be like page 22, which is crazy. So, but what I'm getting at is it will show you what the site itself, again, if you do it on the domain level, you're going to see all the queries for all pages and posts on the entire site that it's been given, that Google has given that domain or any pages or posts of that domain an impression for, regardless of where it ranks. Right. And so that's, in my opinion, the best way. for finding the keywords that Google has given your site an impression for. Again, regardless of where it ranks, it's given an impression for it, which means there's been a search query, a keyword, a set of keywords that Google thought the site was at least relevant enough for it to give it an impression. It might not be optimized for it, which means it might not rank for that, but it's still been given an impression, which means Google found a relationship somehow, an association between that search query and your site. And so for me, that's what I like to do. If you've got a site that has your client site, if it's connected to Search Console, then go into Search Console, check the queries report. And then again, you can start to narrow down by individual pages. Something else you can do is you can sort by impressions. And then, it'll show, and if you click the average position box, then it'll show like another column with the average position by impression. And I like to sort by impressions so that I can start to see the search queries that I'm getting a lot of impressions for, but maybe not many clicks. And then if you look at the average position, a lot of the times you'll see why, right? You might be on page 3 or 4. And so you're getting, you might be keywords there, search queries that have tons of interest, tons of search volume, because you see a ton of impressions, but you have 0 clicks. And if you check the average position, it's on because you're on page 3 or 4. Well, in my opinion, those are keywords, as long as they make sense for whatever project you're working on, if they're relevant to your project, then it makes sense to take those high impression search queries and start optimizing for those, right? You can even determine which pages are given impressions for that search query so that you can go optimize those pages for those queries or create new pages entirely, right? Publish new pages optimized for those queries, if that makes sense. So I don't know how Ahrefs pulls in their data, but I'm sure it's something similar to that. So for what I would suggest, Vance, is use Search Console to identify, opportunities that you're already getting there's a lot of interest for, but maybe you're not ranking so well, or your client is not ranking so well, then you can start to optimize for that. In fact, just last week, was it last week? Whenever. Yeah, I did a webinar for mastermind members in the Semantic Mastery Mastermind, and we were talking about tier 2 link building. And I love to use the Search Console query report to find my anchor text to use in link building for tier 2 links, right? So links that are tier 2 links to build links to my tier 1 assets, because those are the keywords, the search queries that people are actually searching for, right? In order for it to show in the search query report, Google users actually had to go type that search query in or start typing it in, and then Google suggests it, and they hit the suggested search, right? Does that make sense? And so in my opinion, like keyword research tools like Google Google Ads Keyword Planner, that's a Google Ads keyword tool, right? I mean, I still use it too to determine, kind of benchmark volume, monthly volume metrics and such, but they're just that. They're just indicators. They're not accurate numbers. So I like to use Search Console data for more specific keyword research for projects that are already in existence, right? So this might be a little bit off topic, but another, Vance, and I see you got a follow-up question, so I'll answer that in a moment. We were just talking about Magic Page stuff earlier, and mass page stuff, period. I'm using Magic Page plugin right now, but that is a fantastic tool, even if you don't plan on building out a bunch of Magic Page stuff, just for keyword discovery. If you're in a new niche, a new industry, or even perhaps in a new location, same industry, but perhaps in a new location, building one of those sites, even if it never ranks, like a Magic Page site, and just deploy the site and let it go out there, attach it to Search Console, which I know Mike Martin doesn't do, but I disagree with him on that, because I know that if you deploy a Magic Page site or a mass page site, and it starts to index, whether you rank it or not, you can use the data that Search Console will give back to you as use those mass page sites as like a discovery tool, right? Because it will start to show you specifically the keywords that have all the keywords, all the search queries that the site is given impressions for. But then again, you can sort by impressions, and the keywords that have the highest impressions, or the search queries, I should say, that have the highest impressions, you can identify from those, like which ones are the ones that you have commercial intent. For example, if, for me, I'm in a local industry, so I'm always targeting keywords with commercial intent. I don't really care about informational queries, at least not initially. Once the informational queries are people that are just like looking for information. They're not ready to hire a tree service contractor yet. So I'm always looking for commercial keywords first. But once a project is matured a bit, then yeah, we'll start targeting via blog posts some more like more top of funnel stuff instead of bottom of funnel stuff. And again, Search Console is great for all of that. So using a tool like Magic Page plugin or any sort of mass page creator that you can connect to Search Console and then just deploy the site for discovery purposes only. Again, even if you never intend on ranking it, great. You can still get a shit ton of data from Search Console about the search queries in those areas that you're optimizing for, specifically that people are searching for, right? And now you've got real data from Google specifically telling you, okay, here's the keywords that are getting high volume. Out of those, certain ones are going to be more relevant to my project than others. Well, those are going to be the ones that I start targeting first with a more traditional site build, right? Or for a client site or whatever. So I would encourage you, Vance, even, possibly check that out. For a client, if you're doing client work, you could always deploy a site on just a, inexpensive domain. You don't have to spend a ton of time on design or anything else. It could be mostly text-based pages, but it's just to send it out there, connect it to Search Console, allow it to start indexing. It takes a few weeks, but then you'll start getting a lot of data back that you can then use that data to optimize for the projects that you're getting paid for. Does that make sense? So I don't know. I think Search Console is a wealth of information, guys. I really do. He says, thank you for that. Can I embed a live YouTube stream on a site? Client owns a tennis club and wants to show real-time play on the courts on the website. Thank you again. Yes, of course you can, Vance. You just get the embed code, just like you're watching on this page, right? You can embed the embed code for YouTube while you're doing a live stream. And yeah, you can do scheduled live streams as well. So, but yeah, absolutely you can do that. And typically, embedded live streams get a little bit more SEO love than just embedded videos do, if that makes sense. We did a test a few years ago with press releases where it was for a real estate office, actually. Michael Bowes used to work for them, actually. Anyway, where we scheduled a live stream and we embedded the YouTube code in the press release. We published a press release, and but we had the press release published schedule we had it scheduled to publish about 30 minutes before the live stream was to occur, right? So it was kind of a simultaneous press release being published and then syndicated out to all of its pickup points, the other news and media outlets that would republish that from that feed, that PR feed. Anyways, and then it had the YouTube embed code in it, and many of the sites that it would publish on would also publish to YouTube. Not all of them, some of them won't allow that, but many of them did. And so within that 30 minutes, as it was kind of distributing it out to all its publishing partners, and then when it went live, I mean, it ranked like instantly. The video did, as well as the original press release ranked for the keyword, which was real estate terms. And real estate terms are not easy terms to rank for. And this one actually ranked, and it was a test. It was a test to see if a live stream being promoted with press releases could, rank even in a very, very competitive keyword set. Now, it didn't last long. It was short-lived. I think it lasted for like 3 days before it started to drop rapidly off the first page. But it was a really interesting test. So we know that there's, and by the way, years ago, there was, when Hangouts on Air first started, which now it's YouTube Live and all that, but back when it was Google Hangouts, we had a number of programs that we tested that, were like SendWire and things like that, where we could take a YouTube embed code or a Hangouts on Air embed code, which is essentially a YouTube embed code, and push it out across dozens and dozens of hundreds, sometimes even thousands of Web 2.0, like syndication networks, essentially. And then when it would go live, like when you would start, so it was a scheduled live stream, right? And a scheduled Hangout on Air is what they used to call them. And then when it would go live, because the embed code was already present on hundreds or even thousands of Web 2.0 sites, when it would go live, it would rank just like that. It was crazy. It was like unfair because it was so easy to rank stuff that way. Now, it's not quite as effective that way anymore, but I know live streams get more love. It's the same for Facebook. I don't do any Facebook marketing, but if you just upload a video to Facebook, you'll get more reach than an image post. But if you do a live video on Facebook, you get more reach than you do a regular video, right? Does that make sense? So you do get some algorithmic love from live streams. So hopefully that makes sense. But definitely you can do it, and I would test with it. Okay, guys, I don't see any other questions. If you got any other questions, post them now. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up a couple minutes early. But yeah, guys, make sure you mark your calendars to be here in 2 weeks from today for our 7-year anniversary. Adam very briefly went over this, but we typically do, giveaways and stuff on our anniversary specials. And there's a couple things I think I'm going to talk to my partners about, but I think we're going to, 7 years is a pretty big deal, long time. So I think I'd like to give away a couple big things, but we'll see what happens. I got to chat with my partners about it, but just make sure you're here. It'll be cool. Meet Brock. Brock, he's a beast, man. He's got some really good stuff on his Patreon channel, guys. By the way, I don't mind sharing this because, like I said, I like to give love where love is due. I'll just show you. It's only $20 a month, guys. If you guys are doing GMB stuff, go subscribe to Brock Meisner's channel. It's like I said, he puts out 1 or 2 videos a month, usually just real quick hit stuff that he does about some GMB hack that he just discovered. But I mean, the guy's a beast, man. I really respect this guy. I've been subscribed to his channel for 4 or 5 months now, and he never disappoints. Check it out, guys. Again, it's Patreon, patreon.com. Give him some support. If you do sign up for him, let him know that I referred you. I don't get anything for it except just, admiration because I respect him. So anyways, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks y'all for being here. Thanks, Chris, for hanging.